Afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending where you are watching, and welcome to the first session in our Edgware United Synagogue adult education program following the Jewish festival season. This new biannual program has been expanded to include a monthly cantorial session, and who better to kickstart these sessions than two of the leading members of the European Cantors Association. Alex Klein, the co-founder, convener, and director of the European Cantors Association, was born in London into a house filled with cantorial music. Within easy reach of his home were numerous synagogues blessed with cantors of renown. His love of Chazanut drew him to organize many concerts and arrange Shabbatot Chazanut sessions, introducing many talented Chazanim to the UK over a span of nearly 50 years. He is a sought-after speaker and lecturer on synagogue and cantorial music. He now lives with his wife Yvonne in Manchester. His deep knowledge of the cantorial scene finds him posting continuously on the social media in an effort to preserve cantorial music and make people aware of our rich musical heritage. He cares passionately about the employment of cantors in synagogues and lobbies regularly on their behalf. David R. Prager was born in Manchester. He has studied the music and biographies of the cantors of the 20th and 21st centuries. He is in demand as an accompanist at cantorial concerts due to his ability to play all the most famous cantorial compositions in a key appropriate to the voice of the soloist. A chemist by profession, he pursued a prestigious senior management career and pension fund chairmanship in multinational corporations. He lives with his wife Jill in Surbiton. If time permits, you'll have an opportunity to comment and ask questions at the end of their presentation. So over to you to talk about 5 Dazzling UK Cantors, though I understand that it should really be 6 Dazzling UK Cantors, since as a bonus, you'll be adding cantor Herman Bornstein.
Thank you, Spencer, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome everybody to a wonderful evening of glorious Chazanut. We had many golden ages within the UK, and just after the war, Jews College, and today we have to thank schools like Edgware who have kept the flag flying and have encouraged true traditional Chazanut. Their Chazan today, Yossi Schwartz, is a recipient of the Julian Klein Memorial Scholarship, which was sponsored by the European Cantors Association. And in actual fact, we sponsored 7 cantors in the UK, and 3 or 4 of them have permanent positions and have taken the route of Chazan Minister, which may be the way of the future, but they are much loved. Today we are concentrating on some wonderful, 6 wonderful people: Philly Kopperman, Shlomo Hirschman, Simcha Kusevitsky, Johnny Leib Gluck, Moshe Price, and the added bonus of Chazan Herman Bornstein from Princess Rose Shul in Liverpool. I will now hand over to David Prager, who will introduce the slides and the music.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I've just got one little correction to make to Alex there. We're talking about Simcha's brother, Jacob Kusevitsky.
Oh, Jacob, I apologize.
And we're delighted to see on the attendance list a number of the relatives of these star Chazonim of yesteryear. So a particular welcome in America to Lillian Price, who I see on the list, and daughter-in-law of Moshe Price, and presumably together there with Robert the son. And I see in England the granddaughter of Jacob Kusevitsky, Shirley March. So very good evening to you. And forgive me if I don't mention any more at the moment, but let's get going because we've got some wonderful music to play to you and biographies to tell to you.
And it's also nice to see Judy Gluck from Israel, which...
Hello, Judy. So we're going to play a few pieces that you'll really like, and a film even of Johnny singing V'sechazana with the choir in Johannesburg. Right, let's share the screen. Okay, so here are the 5 faces that we've advertised, and the 6th face that we haven't advertised, we will get to time permitting. But top left-hand side, you see the young cousin Philip Copperman, who was very popular in London in the 1960s when he was at the Western Synagogue, born in Dublin and made a terrific career around the world. And you see him there next to the beautiful Garnet Hill Synagogue in Scotland, where he briefly was incumbent. The second, you see Shlomo Hirschman, who was a chazan in Manchester from 1930, a brother of the famous Mordechai Hirschman, who was in New York. But Solomon Hirschman remained in the UK, unlike all the other candidates that we are going to discuss tonight. And there is a picture of High Crumpsall Synagogue in Manchester next to Solomon Hirschman. In the middle, you can see Moshe Price and the Central Synagogue in Manchester, which is no longer. It is now the Shia Islamic Information Center. Bottom left, you can see Johnny Gluck in all his glory and a picture of Marble Arch Synagogue. And bottom right, you can see Poets Road in Dalston with Chazan Jacob Kusevitsky. So let us plow ahead immediately with Chazan Copperman. Born in Dublin in 1931, the Gates at Yeshiva Bocha, and then around 1950 to Jews College in the days when Pinkasovich was the lecturer in cantorial studies. I was in his choir. He was on trial actually at my bar mitzvah in Manchester in 1965 and obviously got the job. And he studied opera with Dino Borgioli. He studied chazonos with Chazan Tauber, who people in London may remember was for a number of years in Hendon. Actually, before that, he was in North London as well, briefly, having survived Auschwitz. Philip Copperman was appointed at the Great Synagogue, Duke's Place, which was a patched up building after the bombing. And he was there in 1950. And that's a picture from about 1950, where you see him as a youthful cantor in full regalia. Subsequent posts in Leeds, Southport, Glasgow, London, Manchester, South Africa, Zimbabwe, North America, and again Scotland. Retired 2003 to Netanya, and sadly passed away in 2010. The program that you see in the middle of the screen is the 1968 Royal Festival Hall concert of the London Jewish Male Choir with Simon House and Philip Copperman. And I, as a teenager, actually went to that. And if anybody listening has got a tape of that concert, it's worth good money. So I would be very grateful for it if you find it. So let us, with no further ado, let Chazan Copperman, with his beautiful lyric tenor voice, sing to us. And we've got 2 pieces. First of all, a tape that he gave me in Netanya that he had made many years before in Scotland during his first incumbency in Glasgow, Al Harishonin by Leibele Waldman with piano accompaniment. Copperman. Now we're actually maybe going to tell you a story because it relates to the interlinking of the careers of Chazan Copperman and Chazan Price. Because in 1951, when Chazan Copperman left London, he auditioned to take over from Chazan Price. The Price family may not know this because they'd already gone from Manchester. And he was a bachelor, aged 20 in 1951. And Moshe Price had been a bachelor, aged 19 in 1933 when he had come previously to Budapest. And Dayan Steif, the great Lamdan in Budapest, was the rabbi of the Kaczynski Street synagogue who indicated that the young cantor should be married if he's going to take especially the High Holy Day services. And he was being put up by the family Pollack, and the daughter of the family Pollack was deputed to find a groom, a bride for this groom, And she said it won't be necessary because I would like to marry him myself. And so when he came to Manchester, he was already married in 1939. However, Philip Copman, when he came to Manchester, wasn't. And he was under pressure from the president to marry his daughter. So he actually declined the post and went to Leeds, where he did get married. And if Jeanette Copperman is on the board tonight, she, I guess, will have been born shortly after that shidduch was made in Leeds. So let Chazan Copperman continue now. He was a brilliant sight reader and maybe one of the most popular soloists with the London Jewish Male Choir in the 1960s. And his partnership with Emanuel Fisher, the choir master of the Western Synagogue, was terrific. And an elite troupe of the London Jewish Male Choir were the Emanuel Fisher singers, and they recorded with him Zultzer's Avinu Malkeinu, which you're now going to hear with harp accompaniment.
Just before you play this, I used to visit Philly Copperman when he was the minister at Newton Mearns in Glasgow. Besides being a good chazan, baltafiller, laned beautifully, and also as a minister gave a wonderful sermon and share. So he was an all-round Talmud Chacham, besides having the most magnificent voice. And I must say, it was a privilege to meet him, to schmooze with him and talk to him and Blossom in their flat in Newton Mearns when we used to visit.
Terrific. And I see Jeanette is indeed on board. So hello, Jeanette. You will have a chance to greet us all afterwards. And meanwhile, we can hear the second item, which is indeed Avinu Malkeinu by Solomon Zultzer, arranged by Emanuel Fisher. moving swiftly on. So now we come to Moshe Price. And if I reveal a preference here, I have to say this is the favorite voice that I have ever heard. Both Alex and I got to Manchester too late, you could say. I was born in Manchester, but in 1952. And Alex moved much later to Manchester. And Moshe Price had left there in 1951. And he did, however, return for 2 concerts, once when I was 12 and once when I was 17. And I went to both of them. And it was really an amazing experience because I hadn't heard a voice with such beautifully tuned timbre, such microsecond perfect coloratura, such a terrific range, comfortable to top C, solid in the middle range, a big voice, a little man, and he was davening from the stage rather than concertizing. Had his little siddur, his trusty accompanist was the famous Manchester choir master Fabian Gonski, who conducted for Hirschman for many, many years, who was a brilliant pianist. But in the 1960s, before they'd invented clips on a kippah, if you were a pianist with no page turner and you were trying to keep your kippah on, look at the music, pray, turn over the page, it was a stressful business for Fabian Gonski. And I remember feeling sorry for him alone on the stage there with no page turner, trying to keep going, but he did a terrific job. And Moshe Price didn't make studio recordings, records. So the rare recordings which exist of him are either from live davenings, and in New York there were a few weekday charity Ma'ariv concerts which were taped when tape recorders got going in the 1960s. And we are fortunate that those have been digitized and they have been kept safely since the 1960s, so we can hear them now. But to introduce him, and we will hear from the family later on when the speaking is opened up, but he was born in Poland, in Lodz, in 1914. And this is before the Russian Revolution, so we're talking about Tsarist, the Tsarist Empire, which included Poland. And he was orphaned of his father in 1915. In fact, his father's grave is still visible and able to be seen in Lodz Cemetery. There's an interview with him at the Hebrew University website when he was in his 80s, where he mentions that he sang in the choir of the Linas HaTzedek synagogue in Lodz in his youth. And by the time he was a late teenager, he already knew Nusach backwards. He was naturally extraordinarily musical. In his biography, it says that he used to go out to sing, to make money for his poor family. His mother had remarried and he had a stepfather and subsequently many step siblings, all of whom were murdered in the Holocaust. He alone had been able to move away. Now, I told you about Kaczynski Street in Budapest, where he came as a 19-year-old. So he won that job, and it was against terrific competition. Cantor Hirschtick says that his uncle applied for that job, and he was quite a famous chazan who spoke directly to God. And I think maybe he was expecting to get the job, but he was so frum that he wanted his own shechita. And Dayan Steif thought it might be inappropriate for the chazan of the main Orthodox synagogue to require private shechita for any meat that he would eat. So anyway, the delegation came to meet the train at the station looking for this cantor from Lodz. And Chazan Hirschtick told me that everybody almost had gone from the platform. And there's a little fella, a young chap, at the end, and they said, "Where's the chazan?" They say, "Ich bin the chazan." Where's the cantor? I am the cantor. Anyway, when he opened his mouth in synagogue, people were absolutely overwhelmed. And I've got a friend in Israel whose father went to that shul when he was a student, and he said that religious or not religious people came in there to be spellbound. And after having given him such a strong introduction, I should play you his music. However, before I do that, I'm going to magnify the 1933 Polish newspaper advert from Der Heint, that's Today newspaper. So if I click on here, zoom, the Yiddish readers will be able to make out what it said in the newspaper in 1933. This is before he went to Budapest. He's a teenager in his late teens. He became 19 that year. Lodge in the top right-hand corner. Saal Philharmonia for the good Yiddish readers. Philharmonic Hall. Then it's got its address, which is a Russian name, number 20. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. New Year and Day of Atonement. And then if you read the smaller print, that Davenen will lead the services. Der phenomenale Chasen und Singer, the phenomenal cantor and singer, welche vermacht a prachtige lyrische Tenorstimme, who possesses an impressive lyric tenor voice. Ehrliche coloratura. So, and this is what I noticed, genuine coloratura. It wasn't singing steps of notes up and down, but he had natural flow in Yiddish, Wasser coloratura, fluid coloratura, upwards and even more difficultly downwards when there's less air pressure. And una Geschmacke Dictia. And you'll also notice his diction is very tasteful, as you will hear in the following two pieces. So there in the middle of the text, Moshe Price, mit Begleitung, with the accompaniment von a speziell einstudierten Chor, with a specially trained choir of 40 men, unter der Leitung, under the leadership of the known director and composer Hertz Rubin. And then it tells you where to get the tickets and how much they are and what have you. But that just gives you a taste. If this is a teenager in the Philharmonia Hall of Lodz, which today is still the principal concert hall of Lodz, you'll get an idea. Right. So let him sing. This is a Vurachum excerpt from a weekday Mariv concert in the 1960s in New York. that's a live Mayor of Dazzling in New York. And I'm not going to play the whole of Der Amolige Yid. There's a long Yiddish song by Abraham Singer, Der Amolige Yid, the Jew of yesteryear. And it starts with the prayer, Elokeinu Shoma, which is part of the morning prayer, where you are hoping that having gone to sleep, God will return your soul to you in the morning. And it speaks about the Jew of yesteryear, how he would run when the Shammos would knock on the shutters in the morning to summon you to Shachris. He would run to do God's bidding. And the refrain is that I look around for him and I can't find him. And the final line that Chazan Price puts in here is, I've found him, with a top B flat. So I play you a couple of excerpts. And he also, as Abraham Singer, the Yiddish songwriter and balladist, used to do, mixes in cantorial elements with the Yiddish narrative. And the cantorial elements in here are absolutely spellbinding. So that's why I chose it. Let's see if we can make him sing the second one. Right, here we go. This is from again a concert tape. Okay, and now we're going to move him on to the chazonas. Okay, so before we move on, let's just look at the picture of Kaczynski Street Synagogue in Budapest, where he was appointed at such a young age before the war. 2 tiers of ladies' galleries, not quite as big as Doheny Street round the corner, but nevertheless a phenomenal building. And it's very unobtrusive from the street, but inside it's like the TARDIS, and it's quite a big, beautiful expanse. His next post was here in Manchester at the Central Synagogue, which had only been built in 1928. And there he was from Pesach 1939 onwards. He had come under pressure, being a Polish citizen, from the Hungarian fascists to be required to have a work permit, which was impossible to get, so that he was more or less forced out by the fascists before the war. And he, meanwhile, married with 2 small sons, was appointed in Manchester Central Synagogue. And I read the synagogue minutes, and in the minute book, which is now Manchester Central Library, you can see that the synagogue then made efforts to get visas for his wife and 2 children to come to England, which they indeed did. And so for all the 1940s, he was in Manchester. But reading the minute book later on, one sees the meanness of synagogue boards, and the accommodation which they afforded to him was not great. And there was even a hole in the chimney such that smoke came into the lounge, and they gave him a £50 loan in order to repair the wall. And when he got to New York, this is from the Yom Roim of 1951, they chased him for the £50 many years later to New York. And he told them, look, you never got me the house. I had the wall repaired. The £50 is in it. You've still got the house. So don't chase me for the 50 quid. And there you go. The rest is history. He was in New York in 2 posts. You can see a picture in the top right, B'nai Yehuda in Brooklyn. And you can see bottom left in the Bronx, where he went to a couple of years later, also in New York, before moving in 1968 to Vancouver, which I hope is the current building that was right for 1968, because they've moved a few times. And bottom right, sadly, his grave. And he died in 1999. But one other piece worth zooming in on here, which you don't see of many concert programs. The chairman is saying in 1969 for a concert in Manchester in aid of Manchester Kollel, I would also like to express my thanks to Chazan Moshe Price, who has come all the way from Vancouver, Canada, to give his services at no fee. Maurice Rosenstraw, chairman. So it would be quite nice to see that in more cantorial concert programs. But he was such a mensch that I think that might be what he's remembered for even more than his voice. Moving swiftly on, and one of his Talmidim, one of his pupils, is in the audience tonight. So hello to Netanya, to Mendel Feingold, who is maybe the preeminent protege of Solomon Hirschman. Now, everybody in England, normally speaking, will tell you that Solomon Hirschman made no records, because he came to England from being the Oberkantor of the Nozick Synagogue in Warsaw when they built Higher Crumpsall in 1930, and he made no more records. But in the Yivo collection in New York are 2 records. A photocopy of one of them is at top left on the Sirena, which is a Jewish company in Poland before the war, which was totally destroyed, and very few of those records survived the war. Here is a record made in the late 1920s, just before he came to Manchester, which nobody much in England knew about, until I gave a talk, actually at the request of Spencer Nathan in Bournemouth many years ago. And a chap came up to me at the end and said, there are indeed records of Solomon Hirschman. And I said to him, well, okay, I'd like to hear them or see them. And he said, well, I moved to Bournemouth. I gave the friend, he put them in a box. It's in his attic. I asked him for him. I asked him for them, but sadly, they are lost. So then I commenced to search around the world, assuming that these records did exist and they weren't mistaken for maybe the famous brother Mordechai Hirschman. And lo and behold, found this. And Solomon Hirschman also, like Moshe Price, had two sons. And one of them is still alive and is 98 and was born in Warsaw and aged 8 came to Manchester in 1930 approximately. And he had never heard of this record. He lives now in Australia. And I played it for him and it brought tears to his eyes and he was really happy to be reunited with his father's voice. Now his father was well connected with all the big chazonim of Warsaw of the 1930s and the 1920s. And he'd gone in 1930 to Manchester. So the most famous chazan in Warsaw in 1930 would be Moshe Koussevitzky. And the historians of Chazanut will know that the Hirschman brother, Mordechai, the famous star of New York, had left already after the First World War. 1919, 1920, he went with Leo Lowe to New York. So the two brothers were apart. You see them on the bottom right, Solomon and Mordechai. They were apart from 1920 to 1930, one in New York, one still in Warsaw. But in 1930, when the younger brother came to Manchester, it was possible now for them to be united because maybe the older brother would give a concert in England. And lo and behold, you see in the Manchester Guardian a notable concert in the Albert Hall, which was at the end of 1930, beginning of 1931. And on the left-hand side, you see a notable concert in 1936. I think if we zoom on it for you guys, you'll be able to see that 36, that Cantor Moses Koussevitzky came to the Albert Hall, Manchester. And during his visit, the bottom line there, he is the guest of Cantor Solomon Hirschman of the Higher Crumpsall Synagogue. And you'll be glad to know that Mordechai Hirschman, when he sang in Manchester, got a decent review from the critics. Here is the synagogue, Higher Crumpsall. And a 98-year-old son, when I visited in Australia a few years ago, said to me that when Moshe Koussevitzky came there in 1936, he got a solo in the Musaf Kadusha and he was scared stiff. He said that Moshe Koussevitzky was very charming and it all passed off very happily. So what does he sound like? Well, he doesn't sound like his brother. He's got a heavier voice. You can still probably just about call it a tenor voice. Mendel will correct me later on. Here he's singing a beautiful Eitz Chaim hymn. So chaps, that's the end of the digitization of that one, but you have to imagine the end. If you want the end, let me know later and I'll see what I can do about sending it to you. Moving swiftly on, we come to Johnny Gluck. Now, first time I heard Johnny Gluck singing was in Manchester, just after he was appointed in Steencourt. He was born in 1948 in Hungary, the son of a chazan, brief stay in Paris after the war, then brief stay in London, then more years actually now in Dublin, where he grew up. Then his dad was appointed in Sydney, and Johnny came to Leo Brill's chazanus class in Jews College. And as soon as Chazan Kopperman left for Manchester in 1966, Johnny Gluck came in to the Western Synagogue, again with Emmanuel Fisher as the choir master, and that commenced also a terrific partnership. Shortly thereafter, he moved to Manchester, where I heard him for the first time. It was in a concert when David Kusevitsky flew in from America. And I have to say that I preferred listening to Johnny Gluck. In the program, he was announced as Late Gluck. Maybe the Johnny came slightly later for the concert programs. And I think he sang Esa Einai, a piece made famous by Moshe Kusevitsky, I think composed by Yardeni. And it was beautiful. Sung so maturely, such a beautiful voice. And David Kusevitsky is an acquired taste. It's a very, very high, shrill tenor voice, and yet this was a beautifully timbred voice that everybody would find immediately attractive. I know we've got Evelyn Green, who used to play for him in South Africa, on board tonight, so we're very much looking forward to a few personal comments from you. And Judy is also with us, so it'd be great if we can hear from you as well. So I've only got one piece from, I think, South African television, where he's singing the Vesechazeno line at the end of Ritzay by Machtenberg, I think with Himmelstein conducting. There are a few cracks in the sound of this copied file. Let's make the whole thing a little bit bigger before we play it. Well, you've got to say, oi, is Chazan. Absolutely great. And then tragically, he was struck by illness and passed away very young in 1985. I suppose even is going to tell me it's not Himmelstein, it's Gus Levy, but I don't know what both of them look like. So when you come on, you'll tell me who was conducting there.
Just a point of information.
Yeah, go on, Alex.
He asked advice of Cousin Avram Hillman about taking the job in London, and Cousin Hillman said he has to go for the job because he will get nowhere staying in Manchester, and he should have a wider audience and take the prestigious job in London. And Baruch Hashem, he did this. And I wouldn't have met him in Jews College, and wouldn't have been a colleague of mine. And we schmoozed and got together. And Reverend Brill, Leo Brill, thought the world of Johnny Gluck. Johnny Gluck was one of his star pupils that throughout his career, he said he never had a pupil like Johnny. So, and I was so pleased to have known him, to have been a friend of his, and to have sang together with him.
I was talking last week to the great Canadian cousin David Goober, and he said he knew him or the family knew him in South Africa, and he ranks amongst also the greatest sight readers. His musicianship was terrific. Like a great footballer, he made time on the note. No, made time on the ball like a football, but time on the note.
And I remember
quarter of a second for each syllable. Amazing.
And Naftali Hurst did the first memorial concert with the South African choir, with the Joburg choir, in honor of Johnny. And he was the first person to do that. And he also did the same with my brother over Sholem when he came to Kinross Gardens. Naftali Hurst did.
Good point, Alex. I recommend to all viewers to get a password for the Dartmouth Jewish Sound Archive. It's free. And you can hear a series of South African memorial concerts in memory of Johnny Gluck. with star chazanim from throughout the world, and it's really impressive to behold. Let us go. The March family has been waiting a long time for us to get to Jacob Kusevitsky, who was the last of our 5, but we've got the secret 6, as you see there, if you permit us to go on beyond an hour. Jacob Kusevitsky was the second oldest of the 4 famous Kusevitsky brothers. You see in the bottom right-hand side there, a postcard, which was a copy of which was given to me by Solomon Hirschman's son in Australia. And the 4 characters you see there are the 3 Kusevitsky brothers of England. On the right, Simcha, at the back there, Jacob, and then back left, David Kusevitsky. And the 4th gentleman is Solomon Hirschman. And it says in Yiddish on the postcard, let's zoom a bit into the screen view so you can see it yourselves. You're now all adept Yiddish readers. Zoom in. And you can see this is 14th of December 1937. And it was produced a picture on the 14th and they posted it on the 15th of December 1937. And if you read the Yiddish, zum ewigen Andenken, for permanent remembrance of unser, our. Lieben Chava und Freund, dear friend, Chava und Freund, Chava and the friend. Hashatz the Schlecht Zibber, with Shlomo Hirschman, Solomon Hirschman, Verbringen Dick, who spent time together, zusammen, this was the next word here, in London. Then he signs it J. Kusevitsky, London, 15/12/1937. So for the marches watching here, there is your ancestor's handwriting and his signature on a postcard to their friend and colleague, Solomon Hirschman. Anyway, why do I like Jacob Kusevitsky? Well, of the 4 brothers, he's the one with the deeper voice, not singing up in the stratosphere like his 3 brothers. And so more of a zoger, and more of an interpreter of the text, you could say, to disaggregate and reaggregate a paragraph prayerfully and meaningfully. We're going to hear him singing V'cheini Hiratzon. When the Ark is open on the 3 foot festivals, and after Ein Kamocha, there's a imploring of God not to make evil visitations on the world and to give us a good time. And Chazan Kopperman used to sing this when I was a boy in Manchester. And he, of course, was a successor at the Western Synagogue of Jacob Kusevitsky, because you will have read all this material by now, because while I'm speaking, I'm sure you'll have updated yourselves on his career. So let's move on to let him actually sing. So there we go. Actually, Spencer, you're the gabbai, and we know the service can't go on until after 12 o'clock. And we've done our 5 chazonim, so maybe we should let the families and people chat. And those who want to stay for the 6th.
How long is it? How long is the 6th one?
The 6th one is maybe 7 minutes. I thought.
Yes, let's let the family talk first, and then we'll.
Right.
Then we'll
And anybody who wants to remain can have a look at Prince's Road. Have a look at the Cyrena label again with now Herman Ornstein. We could tell you a story about him instead of playing him and then come back to him later. I mean, he tried to get a job in brilliant vocal artist, also born in Lodz. And in 1932, he tried to get the job in Brondesbury. And the synagogue more or less unanimously wanted him. But the United Synagogue would not approve his appointment because of his crime of having concertized for money, maybe to finance his trip. He was a successor of Solomon Hirschman at the Nozick Synagogue in Warsaw. So after 2 years with the Nozick Gaboyim, presumably he wanted to get to England as well, and he couldn't. And after that, he went to Lemberg, and then he went to Budapest, and he suffered the same fate as his fellow Lodge-born Price, in a colleague down the road in Budapest. He was at the Rombach Schule in Budapest, and the same fascists said to the same type of Polish citizen, you need a work permit and you can't have one, so you've got to go. And he also ended up in the north of England, but this time in Liverpool. So, okay, that's giving you a taster. He sings a top D at the end of this piece. So those who want to come back after the chatting, you've got a treat in store for you, because it's a Talmudic piece. It's got recitative. It's got a flourish at the end. And he was a real star chazan of the mid-century Eastern Europe. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
It's also nice to welcome from Israel, Daphne Lewis, who was the accompanist of the London Jewish Male Voice Choir, who's also joined us tonight.
Hello, Daphne. Great to see you.
Welcome, Jack and Daphne. Maybe, Daphne, you could unmute yourself and just say some of the people you actually accompanied.
Because Daphne told me, I remember that Philip Kopman was her first teacher in accompaniment. And then she was brilliant with Johnny Gluck later on. So you've got to unmute yourself, Daphne. You're still muted.
Bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah, I think I need to unmute
maybe you need
just
to
put your hand up, then I can find you and unmute
Jack
you.
Coleman. Jack Coleman. And in fact, for Judy's benefit, you know that recently found long, beautiful tape of Johnny singing with piano accompaniment in Ashkenazi. It must be Daphne on the piano. I'll have to send it to Daphne afterwards. And it was never released as a record, but it looks as though it was going to have been.
Elliot,
it turned up in the Chazanut blog recently.
Elliot, could you unmute Jack Coleman, please?
Okay, off you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, now you can speak.
Hi, Daphne.
Hello, I was only a student when I started accompanying Philly Copperman, and he taught me. I just used to he used to get me singing the notes, and I used to make the chords underneath, and he was really my first tutor in Chazanut accompaniment. And then I went on from there. I played with David Kozovitsky, and I played with lots of Chazonim that used to come over from abroad, and it was a wonderful experience.
And you used to play for some of our functions in Wembley, didn't you?
I did.
A long, long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time.
About 1983.
Right.
I'm going to ask any of the family to raise their hands, and we'll bring you in before we bring.
Can
the
we find
general
Lillian Price, maybe?
Yes. Could one of the Price family put their hand up? No. I think one is on YouTube rather than on Zoom.
Oh, I see. Is Yitz might be. Yitz sent me an email saying that if he wasn't able to join from New York, the family was delighted that Moshe Price is still remembered 70 years after he left England, in England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yates is on YouTube. He commented there.
Right. Could you read out the comment, Elliot, please?
Yeah, let me get it. Yeah, so he said, greetings from New York. Yates Price, grandson watching. My parents are watching on Zoom.
Thank you. Well, if people would like to raise their hands, if they want to make a comment or ask a question.
Judy is somewhere here. Judy, let me try and see if what I'm doing.
Yes, maybe you could bring Judy in.
I can see Judy.
So, Elliot, can you enable Judy to be unmuted? Judy Gluck?
She's under me.
Right, go ahead, Judy.
Hi. Hope you're all well. Hope you have a Shana Tova.
Thank you very much.
That's good. What would you like to know?
So, did you get married after you left Manchester, or?
No, before we
You went to Manchester with him?
went to Manchester, we got married.
Oh, right, Mazel Tov, right. So you were there at the David Kozovitsky concert at the Opera House.
Oh yes, I was there sitting with his wife.
So did you think the same as me, that Johnny was better than David Kozovitsky?
I'm not going to say anything. No.
There's another boy at my school whose dad was in the Manchester Jewish Male Voice Choir who told me about it. So we got tickets and we went together. It was terrific. Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you.
Right, so we've got some marches. Shirley March is there.
Can I ask Shirley something about
Jacob.
the four Kozovitsky boys? Because we know Moshe joined David in Hendon and stayed for 6 months or a year or something in the late 1940s, and they also sang at the Royal Albert Hall. But did Moshe ever daven at Hendon with David, or?
I'm afraid I don't know. It was a little bit before my time, or else I was only a toddler at the time.
Yeah.
So I actually don't know. I remember visiting Uncle David and Auntie Pat. They had their mother, Alta Kozovitsky, living with them, and I remember going to visit her when I was a little girl. And that was the mother of. Sorry?
In New York?
No, in Hendon.
Oh, still in Hendon, right.
No, in Hendon. She was living with David and Pat.
Right.
So I remember as a little girl going to visit her. And when they moved to America, my mother used to write to her every week or every couple of weeks in Yiddish, and used to leave me one flap of the airmail letter, and I would also write to her in Yiddish as a little girl. But going back to my grandfather of Shalom, I remember as a little girl being in the Western Synagogue, and I couldn't understand why all the women were sitting there crying on a Shabbos morning service.
I think that's an important point. Nowadays, you don't have moments of ecstasy in a synagogue service because the tenor is singing and moving you into a different world. And in the old days, it was possible to have moments of ecstasy during the prayers, listening to the cantor singing. And now we've got sort of nigun, communal involvement. Alex always used to say that if you want your heart operating on, you go to a cardiac surgeon. So if you want prayers leading for you, you go to a specialist. But nowadays you don't. The policing of the Omud has I'll let Alex speak, I think, reduced.
No, I believe very, very strongly that anything to do with a civic function or the chief rabbi's office or anybody else needs something for Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Holocaust Memorial Day, civic functions, they all go and ask a chazan, a good chazan and a choir to participate. If they show them that respect civically, why can't they show them that respect on a weekly basis as the chazan in a shul? Because it's derech eretz. They wouldn't be able to survive. Yomim Noraim is the same thing. All chazanim are imported. The good chazanim are imported, and they travel all around the world. During COVID,
Alex,
on Zoom and various other occasions, what happened? The chazanim stood up. They didn't ask for money, but they had a responsibility to their kehillas. And it wasn't the Rabbonim that stood up, it was the chazanim. So why are they always treated as second-class citizens? I can never understand it. Baruch Hashem, you look at Edgware, you had Malavani, you had Saif Toran, you had Asher Heinowitz.
I've noticed in the list we've got Renee Freilich, also cantorial royalty.
Yes.
Daughter of Chazan Freilich of Stanmore.
And one thing, because we've had such top-notch chazanim, the whole community know the nusach and they can respond properly. Over Yamin Noraim, we had the traditional nusach hatfilah for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
And it's rare now. So Edgware, well done, Edgware. So,
could I just say, David, before that, I seem to remember when you came to Bournemouth and did a session for me, somebody got up at the end and said at his wedding, the four Kuzovitsky brothers did one of the Sheva Brachas each. Do you remember that?
Yes, that's right. So it must have been after Moshe had escaped from his, he was in Warsaw when the Nazis invaded. He escaped to Russia. He was singing opera in Russia. And at the end of the war, he managed to get a visa to England. So like 1946, 1947, he was in London. And in fact, the Marriott family invited him to daven in Bournemouth for the Yom Noraim after the war. And in the biography of Moshe Kuzovitsky, there's a copy of the letter from Bournemouth Hebrew congregation. If I find it while you're speaking, I'll hold it up to the camera so you can actually see.
I think Flora Frank wants to say a few words from Israel.
Renee.
Go ahead, David.
Go for Renee Freilich first.
I'm trying to.
Can we go to
okay?
First of all,
Flora Frank, go on.
Friday first.
Thank you. Actually, I was on television this morning in Israel for the marathon, so I feel like I'm on television again with this very august company. I feel very humble. Thank you. Two things, something that Shirley said and something that, thank goodness, Alex has said just now and Spencer. I cry. To me, music is ochel nefesh. I'm very moved by it. And I'm not talking about myself personally. I think many people are. And thank God you mentioned our shul, because I'm from Edgware as well as from Israel. And I think we've had great chazanim, and I don't feel that we treat them as second-class citizens. Possibly the way we pay them, I don't know. I'm not into that sort of thing. But I think a lot of people, every 70 people here, we all appreciate chazanot and we love it. And we mustn't belittle them because we've had amazing chazanim in Edgware. We've now still got Chazan Malavani here in Israel. We've got Chazan Hershtig. We've got, I don't need to tell you, you know better than I do. I really believe that this should be something more positive, that we're celebrating them.
Absolutely.
And we're celebrating the past and the future, please God, because there's nothing like cantorial music as far as I'm concerned.
The future is rosy because the Zooms in the COVID era have shown that the high quality musical services are popular and the
and
less musical, let us say, services are less popular.
Tonight on both Zoom and YouTube, we've had over 100 people.
There you are. And it's lovely seeing Daphne. It's lovely seeing Daphne, because I always hear cousin Malavani saying, Daphne, ma shlomech. You know, he's always so happy to see Daphne. She's our celebrity.
You wanted to bring somebody else in, didn't you?
There was Renee Freilich,
Freilich,
the daughter of cousin Freilich of Istanbul.
Oh, yes.
Right. Can you see Elliot?
So, Elliot, can you find her and unmute her? Enable her to unmute herself.
I've allowed her to unmute herself.
Right, Renee, you can speak if you unmute yourself. So far, you're still muted.
No.
No.
Right. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I apologize. The lights aren't working, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay, we can see you. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you want me to say.
I just say something about being the daughter of a cantor.
Well, as you know, you edited a book a few weeks ago, and my whole family are chazonim. Except for one uncle who was a rabbi. They're all chazonim. And the last generation, my father's generation, have all unfortunately passed on. But there's one grandson,
Romy, yes.
Romy.
So he's continued the family tradition.
And he kept us going during the worst part of the pandemic.
Is Jeanette Copperman still online? Yes, she is. So maybe, Elliot, can you enable Jeanette to be unmuted?
And we've also got a grandson of the famous Chazan Katanka in Liverpool. We've got Nathan from Germany, who's carrying on the traditions of the family, and he's joined us. So Nathan Goldman.
Hello, Nathan. So let's first go to Jeanette.
David, at this stage, could I ask you to play a part of that 7 minutes?
All right, okay. We'll go to number 6.
The second half of it.
All right. So Jeanette, you'll have to forgive us. We'll come back to you in a minute. Right. So here is Herman Bornstein, and you're going to hear from Friday night from a selection of Bamer Madlikin. Let's start in just more than halfway through. There you go. Not often you hear a top D, but that's what it is if you check it on the piano. Okay, let me stop sharing again. By the way, Yehuda Marks, who was going to be joining us, did visit the grave of Chazan Bornstein in Liverpool, and I think he's trying to give a message to the Burial Society there that they should smarten up his grave a bit if they can.
Can we come back to gallery view? Yes, right.
Right.
And we'll have one or two more comments.
Okay, so if we can go to Jeanette Copperman now, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We
Yes,
can.
Jeanette.
Yeah, just to say thank you. It's just so lovely to hear my dad singing. I'm trying to find the thing. And what you said about him being a musician, just how incredibly important music was to him. And opera, he absolutely loved opera as well as Chazanut, you know. And we always had like a grand piano, no matter how small the place we were living in. This grand piano occupied the kind of pride of place in it, you know.
I remember when I was in his choir, he wrote out all the, before photocopy, he wrote out all the pieces for all the sections of the choir. And you give him the most awkward interval to sing at sight. And it was like easy peasy for him. And I think your mum might have told me that in Dublin, when he was a kid, people used to come round to knock on the door when he was 10 or 11 or something to ask him to notate their Irish ballads.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
He could do it.
He could do it. He really was fantastic at that stuff. With perfect pitch, you know, and sight singing. I mean, all of it really. Yeah. So
he made a lovely private recording of both opera and Chazanus and Yiddish, and he gave me a copy of that many years ago. It's just a plain white cover, and it's got opera and Chazanus on it, which is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, I don't think I've got a copy of that actually.
Maybe you can get in touch with each other.
Yeah. No, that would be lovely.
Right. We can take one or two final comments.
Let's ask Nathan, who's the grandson of Chazan Katanka of Princess Road, and he's carried on the footsteps, and he's also been taught by myself and Yehuda Martz mainly, and he's a Chazan now in Germany as a full-time position. And talk to us about your family, Nathan, please.
You hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you.
Oh yeah, so it's very amazing event, and I'm only a young kid, but I can tell you is that it's very interesting to see that those chazonim in those days, they were so professional. They really were fantastic, and it's such a wonderful event that we had, and I really enjoyed it. And my grandfather
you're a stickler for canonical dress, bib.
Yeah,
bobble hat.
I'm very religiously wear it.
Nowadays, it's all gone out of the window, hasn't it? So it detracts from the decorum of the service a little bit if the minister.
That's right.
Well, if you notice on the poster, all five Chazanim were in canonicals.
Yes, and we've got to thank Nathan, who just spoke, for finding from his grandfather, who was a classmate. So Reverend Morris Katanka was a classmate of Philip Copperman in 1950 in Jews College, and he had the photograph of Philip Copperman in full regalia, and nobody else had that photo.
Right.
So, not even the family, because this was before he was married. And so thank you very much, Nathan, for that.
Thank you for asking me to say something. I appreciate it.
I think there's also a mazel tov, Nathan, on a family simcha today. I think
That's right.
Your cousin got married.
That's
Marilyn's
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Here is the Bournemouth Hebrew Congregation's letter thanking Moshe Kusevitsky for davening the Yom Noraim in 1946. If anybody wants to see it, they've got to be in touch afterwards again. But there it is in his the biography published by Akiva.
Time is getting on.
Okay.
We'll be able to chat afterwards, but I did mention that this is the first of our monthly Chazanot sessions. We're hoping shortly to post the complete biannual program on our website, www.edgwayu.com, or alternatively, you could contact our office@edgwareu.com, and ask to be placed on the circulation list for the adult education program. Our recorded past sessions are on our Edgware US YouTube channel, and this session will be added immediately on YouTube. Our next cantorial session will be on Tuesday, the 2nd of November, when Rabbi Cantor Jeffrey Schisler will give a presentation on a celebration of London's Jewish choirs. Each of the current musical directors will discuss their choirs and will then play one of their choir's favourite works. Our next Edgware US session will be on Tuesday, the 12th of October at 8 p.m, when Dawn Waterman, the Archives and Heritage Manager at the Board of Deputies, will lead a session on hidden treasures celebrating Jewish archives. It remains for me to thank David and Alex for their entertaining presentation and for sharing their expert knowledge with us, and to let you know that they will be back on February the 1st, 2022, when the topic will be 5 UK choral cantorial gems, though as with tonight, it may stretch to 6. They will be discussing the provincial...
I didn't know about that.
Well,
it was Alex's idea.
They will be discussing the provincial choirs in their heyday, including Birmingham, Leeds and Manchester, and a few other in London town also. Though unlike the lyrics of the 1916 First World War song, Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty, where the soldier had a little gramophone that played the song mentioning all these cities, they will once again be using the most modern technology for their presentation. I wish you a belated Shana Tova and look forward to you participating in all or part of our future program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody can schmooze now.
Now we can have a
We'll
schmooze.
stop the recording now, and we can